It's because their tech team is telling them they can't do it. And the tech team's reason for not being able to do is the architecture, because somebody in their team made a bad decision. And they just don't want to deal with it, is what it comes down to.
Yeah, they're using outdated paradigms, or like they're just not even like, they're just solving the technical part and not thinking ahead.
I think we need, as an industry, to clarify how we define success moving forward.
One, two, three.
Hey, welcome to the Smartest Amazon Seller Podcast. I am your host, Scott Needham. Today, we're not going to talk about being the smartest Amazon seller. We're going to talk about being the fastest Amazon seller. I came across a new idea. I was like, okay, this is interesting. I think one of my top performing episodes was about repricing. Pricing on Amazon is actually more important now than it was 2 months ago because of these new fees. So I have with me Dillon Carter, founder of Aura, and we're going to jump in. Dillon, welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So Aura's been around for a few years. You started in college. Man, we're going to end up talking about how Aura's kind of uncovered an ability to reprice. How fast? Every 10 seconds?
Within every 10 seconds.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So start us as when you're a college student and how you got to now, where you're like, well, we're going to break this Amazon system. Not really break, but like we're going to find some optimizations.
Yeah. So it sounds cooler than it is because I took like 4 years off between high school and college. So I'm not that smart. I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do because I knew I wanted to start my own companies. And was just kind of playing around with a different set of ideas. Eventually got real big into lifting. So in the gym, became a nationally certified personal trainer, did that to pay my bills. And then heard about selling on Amazon and kind of got into that. And at that point, like I had heard about it from the Selling Families podcast episode on Pat Flynn's podcast. So forever ago, like a decade at this point, actually probably more. And just started kind of testing the waters and realized, oh, this is a real thing. This is kind of cool. And for me, I'm a scale guy. I like things that scale. So, I kind of went from trading my time directly for money because I'm being paid per hour to physical products is more scalable. And then eventually getting into software, which is even more scalable. And so, did that, got real deep into wholesale, started one of probably the first wholesale specific Facebook group back then, got up to like 15,000 people. First wholesale based podcast, Wholesale Made Easy. And we basically we just gave away everything we were learning. So I did live sourcing every Tuesday for 2.5 years, like for free in the Facebook group. Like literally there was times where I found a brand. I was like, oh, I hope nobody actually contacts them. This is actually a really good brand. So we did that. We launched VinDriveCRM.com. That was our first software, made all the mistakes. It was really just too small of a segment of the market to make enough money to like really start a company out of. But it was cool. We learned a lot. It was our first commercial software we had built together, James and I. And so we kind of paused and said, well, what products do we use? What software do we use that is really cumbersome that we think we could do a better job on? And that happened to be repricing. And so James spent the next 8 to 9 months just locking himself away, building the beta. We launched and got initial traction. And we've just been growing ever since.
Mm-hmm. Sure. I was like writing down notes because you said a few things that I'm like, I got to follow up with you. I mean, like live sourcing. I'm not sure I know anyone that does that. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
I had someone on my team, he wants to do a 48 hours of using Smart Scout Live. And I'm like, this sounds like a terrible idea. I mean, without even having any experience. So maybe I'll connect you guys on that. So at least you get some reference. You built a competitor to this fair marketplace, which is this wholesale, connect wholesalers to buyers. It tends to be more for brick and mortar. But you wanted to do it to help Amazon sellers. So you've actually been a lot of different spots of assisting the wholesale reseller model, more than most, you're trying things. That's interesting.
Yeah, we're builders at heart. I'm non-technical, meaning I'm not a software engineer, but I'm technical in the sense of we really geek out with product. We love ideas. Like we just like creating things.
Mhm.
So for us, we always view our industry through the lens of inefficiencies, and it drives us kind of insane because we're like, software could do that.
Sure.
Let's do that. But as every company has, we only have so much capacity. And so, we had, by the time I was graduating, I was a finance major. I initially wanted to go into like investment banking, private equity. So while all my peers were going and getting internships, they're like, "What are you going to go? What company?" I was like, "Nowhere. I got my own." Like we started this, it's going well. We were able to pay our bills. It was great. And so I remember submitting my last college paper and just being like, "Cool, back to work. I'm answering support tickets." It was the early days of Aura. I think we only had one employee on the team at that point, so there's three of us. But yeah, we had grown, moved the company to downtown Boston, started hiring, building out the operations. Because for us, this is the first founding experience for us. We had started businesses, but this is the first time where we're building a real company here. Like we got to hire people, like HR, like there's a lot of moving parts with what we do. And so there's a lot of things we wanted to do differently than our competition and other software companies. We wanted everybody to be in-house and intentionally. We wanted to
Yeah.
hire amazing people that could do scalable things and not just throw hours at it, but like hire really intelligent people to own that area and find unique ways to do it at scale. But eventually we got Aura to a really great place, and we just had this burning desire, like, man, wholesale is so painful. And it's not just that, it's really like when you look at the process of placing wholesale orders, it's so antiquated. In a lot of like there's so much variety. There's no standardization, right? It's like, well, this
Mhm.
one I have to submit a form. On this other one, they have this web portal. On this other one, I have to send an email with a PO that I had to put together on my computer. And so there's all this variety and all this data that's existing in your inbox, in your email, and all these different things. And we said, well, what if we created a way to standardize the transactional process and also create a way to do discovery? So how do brands find retailers to work with, and how do retailers find brands to work with? And so we contacted and talked with, I think, 300 brands, and kind of got an idea. We felt pretty confident in it that we could pull this off. And yeah, we spent about a year basically developing this and working in that world, only to have a competitor come in and raise like $1 billion in capital, and was able to, have a slightly different approach, which I think was really smart. But ultimately, we realized in the end, we kind of looked at this after a year and we said, okay, we gave it a year. What are we going to do here? And we realized that's not really the big problem for us that we want to solve. And when we took assessment of everything we had accomplished, we're like, our hearts are really in the e-commerce space with what we do. We love our users. We love what we do. And I'm actually glad we went down that route, because it forced us as a team to learn how to build better products. We had to hire a product designer. We had to do all these different things to pull that off. And we're like, oh, wait, we just kind of took a side quest to build out all these skills as founders, as a team, all these different things. What if we applied everything we just learned to Aura? And then
Mhm.
we're like, wait a second, that's exciting. There's a clear path here. And so we tripled
Yeah.
down. That's why we're like, man, let's re-architect it. The old API was going out kind of in real time, which actually was perfect timing for us. Which led to the hyperdrive feature, because we were already doing some re-architecture work. We're like, well,
Yeah.
we
I
take an
I
extra
can
2 weeks on
relate.
this.
I can relate, like, man, like we've chased a lot of different businesses, a lot of different
Yeah.
business models, and like often sounds really cool, not always a great idea.
That's so true.
But you don't know what's gonna like hook. And the truth is, I
Yeah.
actually, your ability as your skill as an entrepreneur changes. I look back as me as while we were a large Amazon seller, we had no idea how to do B2B marketing and sales. So, now I've spent a journey trying to get better at it. Take a software developer, turn them into a marketer, and
Yeah.
mixed results, but having fun. Like, what's different about this? Like this new version of the API as a
Yeah.
repricer? Is there any fundamental differences?
There are some differences in how certain things are done. That's all I can say, that have
Right.
enabled us to have certain features.
Well, we'll jump into that.
The big changes for us, honestly, was like our system. A
Okay.
lot of what was totally fine, and I'll give a great example of this. What was totally fine in 2018 is just so slow now. And a good example of this is we had something called the 3-hour trigger system. What that did is we basically had it designed our back end to say, whenever you make a setting change or a strategy change, we will reflect that on the next organic price change that comes to us. We did that for efficiency and cost because back then, 2018, every 15 minutes was totally feasible. So every 15 minutes on average, we had an organic price change come through the system. So we said, okay, cool. Like that's totally fine. Well, today we need actual real time. Like if I update my mins from 15 to 30% and click save, I should have those updating now, not in 15 minutes up to 3 hours, hence the 3-hour trigger. Basically, if we did not receive an organic price change in 3 hours, we would force one. So that in today's age, not nearly good enough. So we completely ripped that out. We designed something called the replay system. So now we have something called listing memory. So we always store the most recent information from every price change notification. So if you make any changes, we basically replay that most recent one within a certain time frame with the updated settings, changes, whatever you're happening to
I
make.
love you say that because anytime like a repricer says like, oh, we can't change it because like, Amazon hasn't like, no one else has changed their price. And I'm like, I don't know if I buy that.
There's a way to solve the problem.
Yeah.
And this goes back to my whole point of like, it drives me insane when you have software companies that heavily outsource their development. And this is what you get comments like that of like, you just can't do it. It's like, well, but like you're not approaching this from a product perspective. Most of the software companies in our space don't even have product managers or project managers who are trying to put on their product hat and solve these deeper problems in an intuitive way.
I can relate this to one of my biggest pet peeves, and I still I'm going to die on this hill. So, have you ever been in a car where like, sometimes if you have an iPhone in particular, but I think it's managed differently on an Android, where like it goes back to like your Apple Music. You're like, it goes to something that you've never turned on. I had a friend that worked for Apple and he gave me the technical explanation. I was like, bull crap. I was like, you know, the device ID that your Bluetooth is connecting to, you can create a system that is designed for when you reconnect to a Bluetooth. You don't have to autoplay the first a song that starts with A on Apple Music.
Oh, mine does that all the time. Yeah, I have this problem too, so I'll die on that hill with you. But this comes down to architecture decisions, right? And this is why we call ourselves a tech company in a startup, and language matters, right? James and I will never call ourselves business owners. We're founders. Because if you search books for founders, it's very different content than books for business owners. Are we business owners? Yes. Are most business owners the founder of the company? Yes. But language does matter here. And so a lot of what ends up happening is you have these old architecture, because whenever you outsource tech, a lot of what I've noticed is they're using outdated paradigms. And they're not really thinking about how do I build this for scale and how do I think about this kind of system? Well, like the system design stuff struggles.
Yeah. They're using outdated paradigms, or like they're just not even like, they're just solving the technical part and not thinking ahead of
holistically.
Like, yeah. And they create one system and it's just like, that's going to be it.
So a lot of these things that we're like, why can't you do that? It's because their tech team is telling them they can't do it. And the tech team's reason for not being able to do is the architecture, because somebody in their team made a bad decision and they just don't want to deal with it, is what it comes down to.
Yeah.
Hence why, by the way, when I say we rebuilt Aura from the ground up, like when you migrated, you didn't migrate. You actually created a new account in a whole new system. And then we built a system to pipe to the old one to port stuff in. Like we literally wrote it in a different language, re-architected system design through and through. And no developer wants to do that. Like it was 18 months of just pure agony, but it was the right decision for us as a company and for our users. And that's the thing, is most software companies in our space don't operate like a startup. They're just like, well, this is just how it is. And like, that's going to take time. It's like, well, yeah, it's going to take time. Do you know how painful it was to be telling users, hey, just keep waiting. We're working on this. We promise. And it's 18 months later. Yeah, it's tough, but it was the right decision.
Well, let's jump into the IP that like, you're not going to spill all the beans, but like, we're going to spill the results. You guys call it hyperdrive, but you have found an ability to price super fast.
Yeah.
Just tell us what this is
Yeah.
and a use case.
Totally. So I have to give it a little bit of context here because we have to redefine something. So we've always had instant repricing. Instant doesn't technically mean instant in the way most people think about it. Instant really means in our system, what we can control, it is instant. There's no delay. So if you're getting anything slower than instant, you're being basically penalized for paying less. That's all that is. That's a decision. Now, instant repricing really means 1.5 to 2 minutes on average. And here's how this breaks down. We receive a price change notification. We instantly submit a response to that. But when we submit a response, it's going to take 1.5 to 2 minutes round trip to come back to us from Amazon to say, hey, that's confirmed and live and reflected. So when we submit it, 1.5 to 2 minutes on average before it's actually live. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
We found a way, and this is what hyperdrive is. There's a technical limitation here. So we can only do this up to 50 SKUs in parallel. So think about them like credits or slots. So 50 in parallel for an entire account. We can do that full round trip in less than 10 seconds. And you're talking a theoretical 12x increase in speed. Now, that doesn't mean we're always doing it every 10 seconds. It's when it's needed, right? So we can kind of fast track that. So the outcome of this, which is so cool, is you just naturally see more buy box ownership percentage. If you think about that rationally, it totally makes sense how that outcome comes to fruition. My favorite part about this, by the way, is the input from the user. All you do is hit a toggle for the listings you want. You just say, do it. And we go, yeah, we got you. Not a problem. So that's hyperdrive. What's nice is it's such a complex thing on the back end, but we've designed it in such a way that it's such a simple thing for the end user.
Tell us more, like buy box ownership. You got people's attention.
Yeah.
Give us a scenario. Like say there's one other competitive seller, two other competitive sellers.
Yeah. So let's say you and I are competing. And let's say you're using the regular feed system, which is that 1.5 to 2 minutes. You submit a price change. Now a ticker begins, right? So within 10 seconds, I'm going to respond, take the buy box from you. So let's say, all right, you submitted, I submitted. Now this is where it gets interesting. Let's say you respond to me. And let's say you did that immediately too, just to make the example easy. Now there's a 1.5 to 2 minute timer that kicks off. I can do everything I need to within that. So what ends up happening is it's not just you and I, there's 3 of us. So everybody's at a different time scale. And so what ends up happening is by the time you do get ready to submit a price change, you're submitting a price change to a past event. Does that make sense? Basically, you're repricing in the past in a certain light is how you can kind of view that. So what ends up happening is because I can beat you to the punch and hold it there while you're in that waiting pattern, I end up owning the buy box during that period of time.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Yeah. So that's how, because basically I can react faster and you have a delay, essentially, I can own the buy box during that period, which leads to a higher percentage of buy box ownership.
But then that sounds like, okay, we invented another way to drive the price down faster than ever.
That's assuming your price does go down. So this is so important. I think we need as an industry to clarify how we define success moving forward. Historically, what a lot of people have done with repricing tools to define success is my sales went up or my buy box ownership went up. I can hack both those things. If you said, I want you to increase my sales and that's all you gave me to optimize for, I go, okay, cool. I'm going to drop your prices by 20%. Technically, I gave you the outcome you wanted, which was more sales. Buy box ownership, same thing. If you say increase my buy box ownership, well, how do I get in the buy box? I have a better offer. What's a better offer? A lower offer. So this is why for us, we on the specific listing page, we designed the performance section. It's actually got 4 metrics there, 4 trend lines. You've got buy box ownership, units sold, your price, which is super important. And what's nice about that is you're taking a more nuanced approach. I think sellers need to understand you cannot have the simplistic approach to defining success. You need to be able to take a step back and see how's the big picture going here. Just because you say my buy box ownership percentage went up 20% does not tell me that's a good thing. I don't know if that's true because I could have just decimated your margin, right? So for us, when we developed Maven, which is our AI model for repricing, we had to define what is success here, what actually makes sense. And so you kind of only have 2 levers. You have velocity and profitability, your margin, right? If you want to liquidate, you go velocity high, profit down. So instead of trying to find like create multiple versions of this model that optimize on either end. We said, what if we found the balance first? And what's interesting is this balance between velocity and profitability, we call it an optimal price. It's an actual value, can shift up and down as it should, right? Your market changes, right? Your competition changes, demand, supply change, all these things. And so this optimal price now says, this is how we define success. It is you as often as possible at this price. And so think about this. The optimal price from what we've seen tends to be higher than the buy box. Well, why is that? You have to ask yourself that question. The answer to that is economics. If you have a bunch of competition, it ends up basically suppressing the price, right? You have downward pressure on your price, which makes sense from an economics perspective. So what happens when we design a model that says, okay, we want to be at the optimal price? You can actually release the pressure. So it's interesting, and go look this up on Twitter. There's plenty of people posting about this. You tend to see people say, oh, I got a sale at 35, 30 minutes later, I got to sell at 42. What the hell is happening? That's Maven. We're relieving that pressure. We're getting you as often as possible to the optimal price. Why do I say this on the tail end of talking about hyperdrive? Because hyperdrive is just a speed. It's not direction. It's just how fast can I do the thing that I need to get done. So when you pair hyperdrive with Maven, it's not driving the price down faster. It can actually drive the price up faster. You get what I'm saying?
So yeah. Sometimes purchases happen that you just don't expect.
Yes.
I don't think the buy box is the, or even the quest for getting the buy box is everything, because a lot of things happen for us that we did not expect. Sometimes Amazon, they tender different types of offers. They're like, hey, this offer is going live in literally 3 weeks. We're going to show you their price. You could buy it now, but it's not shipping for 3 weeks. Yeah. Or they'll be like, we're going to give this to an FBM seller. We're going to give the buy box. But guess what? That's when the customer looks for a prime offer.
Right.
And so again, buy box isn't everything. And, you can create a lot of scenarios where it's worth checking out. It's worth testing. Can I price this up and still get a sale? Sometimes the answer is yes. Enough times to make it like worth exploring. So that's kind of like what's always in the back of my mind. When people talk about like pricing buy box, is like, it took me years to like get this nuanced perspective that price up in ways that in ways that may defy logic.
Well, that's the thing. This is so interesting. I've been talking a lot about this. What you think should work, a lot of times won't. And what you think won't work, a lot of times will. And so for us, our challenge is not to listen to users. When a user says, I want you to do X with my pricing, I challenge that and say, well, no. That's the solution. What's the problem you're trying to solve? And then it's up to us to go look into the data to find what is true. This is so important. You can't just build what users ask for. You have to take this nuanced approach of understanding, okay, there's a pain point, but what is the problem? Most users will tell you what they want outcome-wise and solution-wise. That's our challenge. And we have the unique insights in the data to be able to understand how to solve this correctly. And so funny enough, that raising price kind of phenomenon that I talked about briefly, we saw it while beta testing. We're like, oh, that's kind of cool. It's like this emerging thing. Like that's kind of interesting. But we started to pay attention as we went public, and it happens way more often than you would realize. We onboarded a new partner, and he's like, I literally just put everything on Maven just to see what would happen. Margins went up 2%. Did nothing. He's like, what the heck? I'm like, yeah, it happens enough to where it does matter. And here's what's cool. You didn't have to design it. You didn't have to create all this little, setting manipulation. Maven's designed to do that. And what's so interesting in a lot of cases, we're able to raise your price with the buy box for a short period of time. So it's not just that I'm raising your price, taking you out of the buy box, and you're not getting sales, or you may get a sale. Actually, in a decent enough accounts, we are raising their price, holding the buy box before it rotates, and getting a sale still technically in the buy box, and then rotating out and then repeating. And we can do that all day.
I've seen that. Like it's there's even other scenarios where like someone could have added your product to their cart and the price raises. They may get a notification, or they may not even see that.
And just
But
purchase
like
it. Exactly.
the moment that it's been added to the cart, like I think it's the seller is selected. So,
Yep.
and is this like a gamification? Sure, yeah, like, but it's just the way that it works.
Right.
So, um, I'm I'm positive that we've made some sales in that way that were profitable, and maybe we've even made dumb decisions. Maybe we've priced down
Right.
and we were already in the
Yeah.
we already won the sale, and then we like priced down.
Yeah.
But that is an after effect that can be beneficial, and so stealing the buy box, moving around, not a bad idea. I think it's going to be hard for the users to understand the difference between AI
Yeah.
and intelligent rules.
Yes.
Like, let's say there's just a very sophisticated algorithm that just kind of
Yeah.
does like lots of smart things. Maybe it bounces around sometimes. Maybe it does,
Right.
scenario plans for a lot of different things.
Mm-hmm.
What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's a big problem right now because you basically have some repricing tools saying they have massive AI strategies, and you can read the descriptions, and it basically just told you the algorithm in natural language, right? So I think you have to be cognizant of when somebody says we're using AI, you have to kind of take a step back and kind of ask, like, how is that designed? Like, what does that mean? Because AI is such a broad term, right? Like game theory
Right.
technically is a subset of artificial
And now a
intelligence.
lot of people think of generative AI.
Right. We've
As
had people
opposed,
be like, what large language model are you using to power this? As like, none. Like we're not doing text generation. And so
yeah,
that's what's hard right now. There's so much amazing things that are happening, but there's also some people kind of taking advantage of the language from a marketing perspective. For me,
you should just start
I
answering Chat GPT, and then they'll be like, "Oh my
totally
goodness!"
makes sense. Totally makes sense. Yeah, exactly. For me though, I'm a hype guy. I love AI. Like I just got the Rabbit R1, developed today or delivered today. Like I'm playing around, but it's still early days for a lot of this stuff. But AI has been around for a while, right? And so you kind of have to pause and say, well, what domain are we operating in? Like we use the framework of game theory because it actually makes a ton of sense for what we do, but we're not doing game theory repricing. Game theory is actually relatively straightforward, by the way. Game theory is just a simple algorithm that says, if you and I are competing and I have to go first and I don't know what you're going to do, I'm going to not compete, meaning in repricing world, I'm going to match you. And as long as you keep matching me, I'll keep matching you. But the moment you compete with me, I'll start competing with you. That's literally game theory explained. So like that's a simple algorithm actually, but the framework of it makes a ton of sense conceptually. And so what we do is we actually look at defining every one of your competitors. So we'll actually study your competition and say who's competitive, who's non-competitive, because there's a few things here actually. So one, when you're talking AI, you have to understand what is it designed to do. And I already kind of talked about that optimal price, right? How do we define success here? You can't just say it's AI. It's like my son gave me this rubber duck, and if I say this has AI, is that better? No. So I need to know what is it designed to do, so I know where it's going. But for what we do, we need to understand what's true. I know where I want to be at. I want your price and at the optimal price, but what's true? That's actually a lot. And so by what's true, I want to understand every one of your competitors. Who's going to compete with me? Who's not going to compete with me? How do I win against certain ones? Because certain competitors, I have to be 5-10 cents beneath them to actually pull the buy box. That's good to know. And by the way, your competition's behaviors themselves change. You know as well as I do, when you first come in stock, you tend to be very conservative on your price. But as time goes on, you become more aggressive because opportunity costs, long-term storage fees, all these things. So even individual competitors' behaviors change over time. So when I say it adapts, this is kind of what I'm talking about, at least one aspect of it. So if we understand how every one of your competitors is going to behave or react to whatever we do and where we want to go, I can now design in real time the behaviors that are more likely to get us to where we want to close that gap. And so that's essentially what we're doing. And now we're looking at other things like the BSR shifting and stuff like that. So the optimal price itself fluctuates as it needs to. So if you think a toy in Q4, it's going to have a very higher optimal price than that toy in Q1. So there's a lot of this movement, right? But this is where it gets kind of cumbersome because you have like machine learning is technically artificial intelligence, but there are cases where machine learning works really well. And there are cases where machine learning doesn't make any sense at all. And I think for what we do, I don't think it does. I think if you're doing price optimization for a brand where there's no competitive factors in the way that we do it, I think that's great because you're looking at elasticity and the economics and stuff like that. Whereas what we do is far more complex. You can't just have this massive data set and be like, well, in theory, it should go there. It's like, that's not really how this works. And so it is tough, right? Because we're operating in a non-technical field in our industry, and there's a lot of tech here, right? And so what we try to do is do as much education as possible to get people to understand enough to where they can say, yeah, I hear you saying AI, but that's kind of not true. Like, that's not how that works.
I mean, this is a numbers based AI. Well, like your outcomes, there's so many different, like you just can't compare A and B based off of, I don't know, based off of almost anything. Like you could hear someone talk about it, you could experience it, different things. And
exactly.
So it's definitely like worth something like testing out. That's why I probably tested out a few different repricers in my time. And we found that some of the assumptions that we would make that were like the contrarian to like what we originally thought, like sometimes it actually moved the needle and grew our margins. And
by the way, our challenge and our philosophy on this is that most sellers shouldn't have to and won't do that. You know what I mean? Like they won't do the testing because a lot of, they're not data driven, which is totally fine, right? There's nothing wrong with that. But for us, we're like, how do we find those ourselves in our large data set and then bake that into the models so that our users get to take advantage of it without having to understand it?
Now, here's a question. A new user comes in and maybe they input their data. Are you able to like give them a gross margin? Like, do you guys give a little bit of profitability to show them like, hey, this is like what you're experiencing right now. Last week you were here. Now you're here.
Yeah. So we do show analytics on that. So we do show, here's your profitability. You can see basically the profit itself. We don't actually show the ROI over time. This is something we want to go deeper into on analytics because a lot of the questions we get is, hey, I want to know the performance between strategy A and strategy B. I want to be able to know, and that's kind of hard. A lot of people want to split test. You can't really split test with repricing. Unfortunately, there's too many moving like variables for it to be statistically significant. But I do like the idea of being able to have some like, this strategy is getting 10% buy box ownership. This one's getting like 90. It's like, okay, well, is that, again, I don't know if that's good or bad, but like there's a clear delta here that we need to go explore.
Interesting.
But yeah, you can still see like how are things trending over time. This is why we intentionally put a chart which shows your price over a period of time, because we had sellers being like, yeah, I've made some strategy changes and I think it's going well. What do you mean you think? You shouldn't have to think. You should know. You should be able to point to the screen and say, that's better. So we will show, because again, if your buy box ownership is going through the roof, but your price is tanking, that's not good. If your buy box ownership is going up and your price is holding pretty constant, that's actually a good thing. Right. And this is why, again, I think we need to take a more nuanced approach at defining success when we're looking at specific ASINs.
Well, hey, Dillon, thanks so much for coming on, chatting, getting nerdy and figuring some things out. So happy to see where you guys keep going. And because obviously our repricer is super important. So if people want to learn more, it's goaura.com. Is that right?
Yep. GOAURA.com.
Okay. Go Aura. You have introduced new pricing that's more new seller friendly. So it's worth giving it a shot. And that's all I've got. Well, thank you so much for coming out.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me, Scott. Thanks, man.
Okay. Well, we'll wrap up this week's pod. Thanks everyone for listening. And hopefully we make you a little bit faster. And that's the pod. Take care.
1, 2, 3.